Hello and welcome to episode 377 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with...
Hello, Ian. Jason Rabinowitz. How is it going with you?
It's going well, Jason. It's a holiday week here in the good old US of A as we prepare to celebrate.
And Canada.
And well, it's a holiday day here as we celebrate Canada Day on this 1st of July and work our way to the end of the week where we celebrate the 4th of July and the U.S.'s 250th anniversary, the signing of Declaration of Independence, which we'll give it the aviation angle. There's a whole bunch of special liveries now, and airlines left and right seem to be slapping stickers on airplanes as this week goes on. Atlas is the latest.
I thought JetBlue was the latest. I didn't even know there was another one.
No, Atlas, they just have a sticker though. JetBlue did
they took
a
an
larger
special
sticker
livery and put a sticker on it.
They did a larger sticker.
But I think they also flew to DCA and had a whole reveal, which is impressive because I was under the impression that DCA was not an airport for this month because of all the celebrations for America's 250th birthday. It has not been kind to that particular airport.
No, there have been delays upon delays upon delays. But that's what we're doing this week. So the podcast will come out on Friday when, if you're listening in the US, hopefully you're enjoying the day off and working your way into a good weekend and a safe one. We will remind everybody to celebrate safely if that is what you are doing. Let's jump into some news where we head to Venezuela, where on June 24th, there were a pair of extremely strong earthquakes off the northern coast of Venezuela, just west of Caracas. The first earthquake struck with a magnitude of 7.2, followed by an even larger 7.5 quake about 39 seconds later. So two very powerful quakes, very close together. Unfortunately, the magnitude and location of these earthquakes has resulted in a significant loss of life and an incredible amount of damage to the north of Venezuela.
Yeah. There's basically, I don't know if there's any commercial aviation in and out of Caracas right now because the airport, not that this really matters in the grand scheme of things, considering what's happening there, but the airport, from all reports that we could see, is pretty much wrecked. Thankfully, the runways are, at least two of them, are operational. And there's a whole lot of rescue aid and all sorts of other stuff coming in and out, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. What we know now about the status of the main Caracas airport, the Simon Bolivar airport, is that the terminal has suffered extensive damage, including multiple roof collapses, as well as damage elsewhere throughout the terminal building. As Jason mentioned, the two runways are open and are being used for assistance. Most commercial traffic has either halted or moved to Valencia, which has become the de facto main hub for Venezuelan aviation. The carriers moved over there include Air Europa, Copa, Plus Ultra, Avianca, and a few Venezuelan carriers, as well as others that are perhaps bringing aid but are non-governmental agencies. Caracas itself remains aid only and mostly governmental aid only. And it has really begun to pour in, thankfully. There has been aid from all over the world, and most notably, aid from Vietnam was carried by two Vietnam Airlines A350s. There have been all sorts of urban search and rescue folks, medical supplies, things like that. Those flights came via Paris, so Hanoi, Paris, Caracas, and went home nonstop to become the second longest A350 flights ever flown.
That is impressive. Unfortunate that it comes under such circumstances, but for a moment there, you actually thought it was the longest flight ever, didn't you? And it was a slim margin.
It's a very slim margin. We're talking just over 100 kilometers difference between the two. So Caracas, Hanoi is 16,398 kilometers. The longest A350 flight, and this is as best I can find in our data and some other publications. So if there's a longer one, please email us at podcast@fr24.com and let us know that we got this wrong. But the longest one that I can find is the German Air Force A350 in November of 2020.
Wow.
Basically at the height of COVID, flew nonstop from Cologne to Canberra in Australia. And that was basically a German national rescue flight. And that clocked in at 16,530 kilometers. So just slightly longer. All that said, when the Project Sunrise flights begin in 2027 with the Qantas's A350 1000 ULRs, that'll all change when they clock in at 17,016 kilometers. So lots of distance to put on the current record holders, but still great that Vietnam Airlines, along with many others, there were the Spanish urban search and rescue folks, personnel from Japan, the US State Department brought in their special urban search and rescue folks, lots of countries in the region sending supplies, and a lot of non-governmental organizations gathering supplies and things like that. So good to see that folks are helping, and hopefully that aid continues to flow and Venezuela is able to get back on its feet soon.
Yeah. We'll see how much and how long a damper this puts on commercial aviation ex the US, as the US airlines were just spinning back up and actually expanding.
Almost days away.
Schedules. Days away. American had already expanded to 2 flights a day. I think United was out of Houston, I think, was preparing. Delta as well. Those are seemingly going to be on hold for a little while, if not indefinitely, while they rebuild the airport. I haven't seen any timeline for at least getting a temporary facility up, but I can imagine that the services, the ground services, fueling, and everything else required to run an airline operation is going to be in short supply for quite some time.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's going to be up and running anytime soon. It'll be interesting to see how, not permanent, but how long-term the Valencia airport acts as a solution for international passenger traffic. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on, depending on how quickly they can get things back up and running in Caracas. Last week, the day after we hit stop on the recording, something happened in Texas that made me question whether or not my eyes deceived me, if AI had just run amok. And then it turns out that this was real.
And in the US, no less. Anytime I see videos like this, my instinctive reflex is to say, oh, if this is real, this must have been like rural Mexico or Colombia or somewhere in Africa, not Texas. Someone's going to get in a lot of trouble for what we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah. So November 705 Delta November is a former Delta Airlines 777-200LR. This particular aircraft was transferred out of the desert after retirement to Mammoth Freighters, who have developed a conversion program for passenger 200LRs into freighters. The 777 freighter is built on the 200LR platform. So this is a straightforward conversion. Mammoth completed the conversion and passed it off to the new aircraft owner in anticipation of this aircraft being delivered to Qatar Airways Cargo. The aircraft was recently painted in the Qatar Airways Cargo livery. However, it is not yet operated nor owned by Qatar Airways Cargo. It is currently owned by Jetran LLC. Their base of operations and registered address, according to the Federal Aviation Administration, is in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. And that is where this particular 777 conducted what can charitably be described as a low pass.
Yeah, low pass is definitely charitable. I'm really struggling to come up with another term to describe this other than incredibly dangerous near belly landing and then ascent from the runway while also banking to the right while nearly scraping the wingtip on the ground. Not an elegant way of putting it, but that's kind of what happened. I mean, it was impressive flying, no doubt. You got to watch the video. And once they started to gain a tiny bit of altitude, may have passed this by. We may have seen and go, that was a nice, very, very low pass. But once they bank to the right and that right wing dips, I can't imagine there's more than like maybe 7 to 10 feet separating the ground and the tip of that wing. Hard to tell from this video because it's not the highest resolution that we've seen, but it is real close.
Yeah. So a few things here. One, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably already seen the video.
That's true.
So I'm trying to add a bit more context about what you're seeing and why Jason and I are sitting here scratching our heads that we just watched this. Because all of the reaction that I've seen, and this is, I guess, particularly troublesome about what seems like a lackadaisical, like, okay, this was really cool. From a pure watching something on a video,
it was damn cool. Yeah.
Like, let's get that out of the way.
Yes, especially in the age where every damn thing is fake and you can't trust anything you see because it's probably fake and it's probably prompted by some jackass and then put out there as a real thing. No, this was actually a real thing, which is exceedingly rare these days. I know you had to pull the data, make sure this was real, and indeed it was real. So if anyone's telling you it didn't happen, unfortunately, it did happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, it was cool. Yeah, it was really cool. But that should not come at the expense. I mean, here's the thing. If that wingtip had touched, there's a very, very high probability that that aircraft cartwheels and there are at least 2 pilots killed in a crash.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to get to is the fact that this is not your airplane.
That's the biggest problem, is that it ruined the day of everyone else associated with this aircraft, whether it was probably not Delta, but it was still wearing a previous Delta registration. And unless you're Gavin Werbeloff, you probably didn't really care about that because he actually didn't bring it up to us. But it's wearing, it's not in the Mammoth House livery. It's not stripped down in primer. It is in full 100% Qatar Airways livery. And they were not too happy about this situation. And I can only assume they are going to have some strong words with whoever's responsible for this, because we don't actually know yet.
So the aircraft owner is currently a Jetran. The low pass occurred at Jetran's, like, their home base.
And they knew it was coming because they had people out on the ramp waiting and filming. So they knew this was going to happen to some degree.
Who knew what and when is a question I'm sure the FAA is asking a bunch of people right now.
Yes, and what I mean by we don't know who's responsible is we don't know who was actually flying the plane, whether it was their own staff, contracted out staff, some guy they found on the street. We don't know, but I can only assume the FAA is going to investigate and find out exactly who this was.
And we'll see what disciplinary action the FAA decides to take, if any. For its part, the NTSB says it is not investigating this particular occurrence. The only other thing I wanted to touch on here is the data behind the flight and looking at the ADS-B data, because I'll put a link in the show notes where we can talk about, it includes the video, includes our data, but you'll see that the aircraft never passes below 950 feet.
Sure.
And you think to yourself, okay, I mean, clearly doth my eyes deceive me? And no, they don't. That aircraft is just single to low double digit feet above the ground. But the ADS-B data says 950 feet. What's the deal with that? Well, the ADS-B data is reported so that airplanes cannot run into each other.
That's
airplanes
helpful.
have other systems that help them not run into the ground, usually. And so the ADS-B data is reported at standard pressure. So it's barometric pressure above mean sea level at standard pressure, so that all of the altitude reporting for that system is designed to be on the same page with all of the other aircraft, so that no matter what their altimeter settings or anything like that is, they can talk to each other if they need to. And it's also reported in 25-foot increments. So the raw ADS-B file or datum that comes to us is not It doesn't have a field that says 25 feet or 50 feet. It's an integer. And then they're in 25-foot increments. So in this particular case, it was 950 feet. Well, we can do some math and figure out pretty much where that aircraft was above the ground if we have some additional information. So we can correct for local pressure. So 1013.25 is standard pressure, hectopascals, or 29.92 inches of mercury. We know that the QNH, or the local airfield pressure at the time, was 1018. That correction leaves us with 1,080 feet above sea level. Jason, what do you think the elevation, the airfield elevation of Horseshoe Bay Resort Jet Center is?
Going to be right around 1,075.
It's 1,080 feet.
Oh, so close.
Exactly. So we know the aircraft wasn't at 0 feet above the ground. So
it was damn near it, though.
Right. So what we know is that it was between 0 and 25, and closer to 0 than 25.
Yes. What we know is limited, but I'm sure the quick access recorder or the actual recorders on board, which I guess will not be pulled because the NTSB is not investigating, those record the actual
the FAA
radio. The FAA can pull, maybe. I don't know. But those would have recorded the actual radio altimeter information. But that's only going to record the altitude from the radio altimeter, which, Ian, I don't believe is located in the right wingtip. So there is no actual data that will tell us exactly how close the right wingtip of the aircraft was, unless I guess you could do the math of radio altimeter to pitch or roll of the aircraft. You can do the maths, but you have to have the data to do that, and we don't have that.
No. So we will await the results if any public results come forward of
Never
this
will.
investigation.
Never happening.
We'll see. But if someone hands you a recently converted 777-200LR, just don't do that.
Or if you're going to do it, don't film it and put it on the internet. If you want to do something, if you want to do something dangerous, if you want to do something dangerous and cool, the same rules apply as doing crimes. If you're going to do crimes, don't put it on the internet because it's self-incriminating. And that's really stupid. Not advocating to do crimes. It actually is really helpful for investigators if you do crimes and put it on the internet. But in this case, just keep it to yourself.
I did not think that that's where this episode was going to go.
Invite us to watch it in person. We promise we won't tell anyone.
I don't know if we're in more trouble now or less, but let's move on. On the 26th of June, a light aircraft crashed into the tallest building in Beijing. A Sunward SA-60L Aurora crashed into the CITIC Tower in Beijing, killing the pilot and raining debris down on the street below. We don't have any information and likely will learn very little if previous investigations into Chinese aviation accidents are a guide. However, we do know that general aviation has been restricted not only in Beijing, but across the country, albeit unevenly.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those incidents where we're just never going to find any information. I mean, if they're never going to tell us what happened with that China Eastern 7-3, was it the 7-3? Probably, I think so.
Yeah,
they're never going to reveal anything here, especially if this was an intentional act or even if it wasn't an intentional act. They're never going to say anything. There is precious little general aviation traffic in China, especially around Beijing, major cities, but this has impacted whatever GA there is in the country, whether it's skydiving operations or whatever else. But this was a really strange one because the aircraft came out of what I would not consider an airport. It was like a kind of still trying to figure out what it was myself. It was kind of like a manufacturing facility or test facility with a tiny, tiny runway. I don't remember exactly where it is because it's not really on a map. It's not an airport.
Yeah, I mean, this particular aircraft has a long history of
just doing
basically,
circles.
Yeah, it's used almost exclusively for base training. It very rarely leaves the pattern. And if it does, it centers itself above basically a highway intersection, flies around for an hour, and then is done. And so this was very out of character for this particular aircraft.
Yeah, that's really the most we know. Thankfully, no one on the ground or in the building presumably was injured. There was a bit of discussion after the fact in the immediate aftermath of people on social media and even prominent news outlets saying, how could this possibly happen in somewhere as secure as the airspace around Beijing or in China? As a reminder, cities do not have active military aircraft patrolling cities. Even China, I don't believe there are fighter jets just buzzing around Beijing for no particular reason. This aircraft was just outside of Beijing, the same way that is the case around pretty much any city in the world. There are general aviation aircraft doing general aviation things all the time. People asked, could this happen in New York? And well, I've got news for you. The East and Hudson rivers are both general aviation corridors, and aircraft actually land on the rivers. Like if somebody wants to take their light aircraft and do something they're not supposed to do with it, there's next to no reaction time for this kind of thing. So it's unfortunate that it ever happens, but I don't think it was feasible or practical for the authorities to do anything in this case. But thankfully, it was about as light an aircraft as a light aircraft gets. It weighs less than a car. So there's that at least.
Yeah, this is not the first time that a light aircraft has flown into a building, whether by accident or on purpose. This is not something that cities can, absent, I guess, putting air defenses on all major buildings. And like I think you said, it's not practical. No, it's not practical to do that. So we'll keep an eye on this to see if we learn anything else at this point, but I would assume that there will be very little information.
No, this is the last we will ever hear of this, at least from Chinese authorities.
We'll see where we go from here. Boy, was that the wrong button to press news. An Electra Airways A320 operating on behalf of LOT from Warsaw to Tel Aviv accidentally squawked 7,500 on the 30th of June.
For those of you who know what the number 7500 in that order mean, you know how bad that is, especially flying to Tel Aviv. That's probably the worst place in the world to do that.
Yeah. So for those that don't, there are 3 standard, universally accepted ICAO squawk codes that pilots can enter or activate in this case that mean very specific things. 7,700, the one that you see a lot activated and you can get a push notification for on Flight Radar 24, is general emergency. So that can be anything from medical emergency to cracked windshield to engine failure, anything. It's just a, hey, ATC.
Hey, look at me.
I need your attention right now. 7,600 means radio failure. So 7600 means that I've lost communications with air traffic control. And there are some expanded versions of that one. 7601 is being used in some countries, but 7600 means my radio stopped working, FYI, and I'm going to perform certain procedures to get back on the ground safely. 7500 is the code for unlawful interference or hijacking. And that's what happened in this case. It was an accident. The pilot realized that, or pilots realized that fairly quickly.
Doesn't matter though. Once you do it, it's one of those switches where once you flip the switch, there's no unflipping it.
Yeah. So the statement from the Israeli authorities said, quote, a short time ago, 2 Israeli Air Force fighter jets were scrambled toward a civilian aircraft over the Mediterranean Sea after a report of lost contact with the plane. The incident has since concluded, contact with the aircraft has been restored, and there is no indication of a security threat. But they checked it out. They were going to go divert to Cyprus, so they held near Cyprus. They ended up going back to Electra's home base in Sofia, Bulgaria, and then they made it on their way. But oof.
This is a demonstration of the system working as it should. When you squawk, hey, there's a hijacking on board, and you unsquawk it, doesn't matter that you unsquawked it, because whomever was trying to presumably force their way into the cockpit could have removed that squawk code. So good on the Israelis for following up. Good on the flight crew, I guess, for going back to base and figuring out what happened.
And I misspoke, not Sofia. It's Burgas, not Sofia.
Of course.
But Bulgaria nonetheless.
But all's well that ends well. Want to move with safety first, especially flying into Tel Aviv. They are not going to screw around with a potential hijacking. So, yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that unless you mean it.
Unfortunately for the passengers, their day started. They left Warsaw at 11:35 a.m. and arrived in Tel Aviv at 2 a.m. the following day.
Oof.
So a long day for those passengers. Let's continue with some oops. An Air India flight entered Pakistani airspace.
You shouldn't do that.
No, that's really bad.
I mean,
nothing happened.
File it under things that shouldn't mean anything, but really are quite meaningful right now. Hopefully we can get back to a state one day where this means absolutely nothing. But what happened here? I think you said the aircraft was holding due to air congestion, actually. And
so there was congestion. So this was Air India flight 479 from Delhi to Amritsar. And they were attempting to land in Amritsar. The airport was dealing with holding for aircraft that are on approach because they needed to do a runway inspection because of a reported bird strike. So an early aircraft said, hey, we hit a bird upon landing. This flight was on approach. They were told to go around. They went around. As part of going around and vectoring and dealing with traffic, they briefly entered Pakistani airspace.
Yeah, not great. There are worse places to do this, I guess.
The big issue here is that they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you assume they knew that it happened in the moment. We don't know if they did or if they didn't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if their flight displays have geographical boundaries like that.
The aircraft controller knew because the aircraft controller coordinated with Pakistani air traffic control.
There you go.
And said, hey, heads up, they did this. Sorry about that. I don't know if there's ATC audio of the pilots being aware, though I assume that the air traffic controllers queried what they were doing, or if wondering what was happening, or trying to get them back into Indian airspace. But then they didn't say anything. And that's where the DGCA had a real problem.
You know what? Good for them for following up on this. And you don't want something like this to turn into an actual international incident.
Exactly. And I think that's where the issue really arose. Not that this happened, because, you know, these things happen all the time with like weather. Like there are still, I mean, you can see Russian aircraft passing through Baltic states. You can see Baltic aircraft passing through Kaliningrad when there is weather. That's something that just happens and continues to happen and continues to be looked upon as it's better that the hundreds of people in the sky are safe and happen to fly through some airspace versus, you know, the alternative. And so I think the bigger issue is they just didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, there are a few places in the world where this is an actual huge no-no. And unfortunately, this is one of those places where you just can't do that.
Yesterday, on the 30th of June, the Wall Street Journal had a scoop that reported Federal Aviation Administrator Brian Bedford is considering expanding the U.S.'s ADS-B mandate, bypassing the standard rulemaking process to mandate that more aircraft equip themselves with ADS-B transponders and begin using ADS-B in as well.
Why skip the normal rulemaking process to do this, I wonder?
That is unclear. No final decision has been made. The FAA says that they have not made any final decisions. This would speed things along as far as equipage and things like that are concerned. But it seems to me that, you know, if it's worth doing so quickly now,
why wasn't it worth doing it several years ago and doing it the correct way?
Or 6 months ago, or right after the NTSB issued its recommendations?
We'll see. We don't know anything because other than the Wall Street Journal scoop, I don't see anything. There's nothing posted by the FAA. If they're not going through the proper rulemaking procedures, that there's clearly not going to be a rule to take a look at or comment on as the public or the industry. So I don't know. We'll see if this becomes real or not. But right now, it's a thing that may or may not happen. I don't know. Who knows with this particular administration?
We don't know. What we do know is that the FAA is getting ready to propose new radar altimeter mandates as the C-band spectrum auctions continue. This time around, though, they're coordinating with the FCC to make the proposal have some rebates for airlines that have to refit their airliners.
No, wait. You can't coordinate. We've done this before. You have to first wait until the last possible moment and then point fingers at the other guys and say, well, you didn't do your job. And then they say, well, you didn't tell us we had a job to do. You can't plan ahead.
Apparently, lessons have been learned.
Impossible.
So what the FCC is proposing, or is said to be proposing, is that as part of the spectrum auction, those winning the auction will be required to contribute rebates towards the retrofit of radar altimeters that need to be upgraded because the radar altimeter spectrum is right next to the C-band spectrum.
But they just replaced all these altimeters. What did they replace them with?
This is that separate upper or lower C-band spectrum. So it's like on the other side.
Yeah, we've talked about this before where there's just no planning ahead and this is going to come back to bite them in the future. And here we are. This is that future biting happening. If they had planned
future nibbling.
Yeah, if they had planned actually ahead, they would have, worked to develop radio altimeters that were protected on either side of the band. But I guess those didn't exist yet.
But I think that's what this is. I think this is, if you've already installed the retrofitted transponder, you don't have to worry about this. But this is for transponders that were unaffected previously, but might be affected now.
Ah, I see. Okay.
I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, please let us know, because
who knows?
I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again.
Nah, can't be.
Jason, if I wanted an A319neo, could I order one?
You can. You, as Petchmo Airways, can. It's just you're going to have to ask Airbus nicely because they're not really going to proactively tell you that it's an option anymore.
To be fair, were they ever telling people it was an option?
Well, not so much recently. There are A319neos out there. I think they're all in China. And there are still some pending orders for them, but
there are a couple ACJs, I believe.
Yes, there are some ACJs out there, but there are a very, very, very small number of A319neos operating for like Tibet Airways and Air China, or maybe China Southern, doing very, very specific hot and high missions. But apparently Airbus has thrown in the towel on proactively marketing this because Flight Global noticed, hey, this chart's got the A220 and the A320neo, but it ain't got no 319neo. And yeah, they're right. Airbus isn't pushing this as a commercial aircraft, as something that's available anymore. But they'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to churn them out if an airline wanted it, though I can't imagine that happening at any point.
Yeah, I suppose it's just, we've got all the parts. We can slap one together.
I mean, it's just a smaller A320neo, same engine, same everything else. That's why no one wants it. It's a smaller, worse version of the 319, except for like a couple of routes in China that really, really need it.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. There's also the Farnborough Air Show coming up in less than a month. And that chart might look a little different come the end of July.
Are you hinting at a possible launch of the A220-500? Because if so, that's exciting. I don't see it. I don't see it happening.
Maybe. It's going to happen at some point. At some point, they have to announce it because they've done all but announce it. So maybe.
Maybe they bring back the A318 and give that a re-engineering that they never did. Wouldn't that be something?
Do you think Tim Clark finally gets his A380neo?
Oh, no. Could be the A380 Plus. Remember that? That was a thing for like 20 minutes.
Did anyone actually get any of that?
No, that was the like enhanced winglets and other things. That never happened. That was a very last ditch effort to do something with the A380. But I guess it would be feasible as a retrofit sometime down the road. But they're more concerned with, hey, these wings are cracking rather than, hey, we need another 0.25% of fuel efficiency out of those right now.
Fair enough. That's a good point, Jason. That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Don't put any more weight on those wings, all right?
Exactly. Let's not do that. Let's head over to Ireland, where the Irish government has decided to retain for longer ground-based navigation beacons because of the effects that have come about due to GPS or GNSS jamming and spoofing. These are a bunch of near end of life navigation aids, but now they're looking at how can we keep these around a bit longer because they're less susceptible to interference.
Yeah. Are we talking things like VORs or other radio-based navigation?
VORs, NDBs, things like that.
This has been talked about for a long time, that we are actively dismantling a completely functional, mostly functional, ground-based system that has been rock solid for the better part of, well, more than half a century, and replacing it with something that is not technically flawed, but technically capable of being completely disrupted or spoofed in many cases. I'm a little surprised it's coming out of Ireland first. I didn't know it was much of a problem there, but I don't know what the status is actually of these nav aids in places where GPS jamming and spoofing is really problematic. But we know entire routes have been canceled because of that.
Yeah. So what's happening here is the Irish Aviation Authority is just slowing down their replacement of ground-based systems with GPS-based systems. They're not canceling it. They're just slowing it down, which I'm not really sure. The other thing is Ireland.
Why Ireland? I don't really understand that bit at all. This report comes to us from the Irish Times, and it just specifically talks about Ireland. And it's very surprising that it can't say that it's not happening in places like Sweden or elsewhere that are closer to the Russian or Ukraine border, because maybe it is. Maybe they're even going back and installing VORs and other things like that. Probably not. But the equipment's getting very, very old, but very, very old things. You can continue to maintain them for the right price. It's just that it's going to get more and more expensive to do that. And I don't think anyone's churning out VOR equipment anymore.
I mean, maybe not new, but they're going to keep plugging along as best they can. A story out of Florida, Jason.
Oh, here we go. Florida. It's going to be good.
Virgin Atlantic passengers arriving at Orlando International Airport, which, let me just stop here and talk about the fact that the Orlando Sentinel has abbreviated Orlando International Airport OIA.
Yeah, you can't do that because you're going to break people's brains, especially if you are the home newspaper, like the Orlando Sentinel. You can't refer to your own airport wrong. Come on, we have codes. We have actual industry standardized codes. You are MCO. You can't deviate from that. I'm sorry.
I don't understand what this is all about.
Not like an airport code that is not typically used. Like, I don't know, DEN maybe stands for Denver, but I don't refer to it as DEN. MCO is like literally their social media handle across all platforms. Like, that is what the airport refers to itself. So to deviate from that at all, that's not great. Don't do that. OIA.
All right, on to the meat of the story, which is somehow even more...
No, this is the story. Forget the rest. This is the story now.
So Virgin Atlantic flight arrives in Orlando, and there's bad weather. And as we've talked about before, as part of storm preparations and storm management, ground handling facilities, ground handlers cannot operate when there's, thunderstorms in the area because they can get struck by lightning, and that is bad.
And it happens to be that Florida, I believe, is the lightning capital of the world. So they take that stuff seriously there. If there's lightning, you can be sure that they are going to take it seriously, and all ramp activity stops. What is it, like 12 minutes, something along those lines?
Depends. I'm not sure exactly what Orlando's strictures are. But needless to say, there were delays. However, these delays were much longer than 12 minutes. These delays were hours long. And so one passenger said that they were threatened with arrest if they left without their baggage.
This is weird because it comes in a stage of entering the country where you're kind of in limbo because you've already gone through immigration, but you haven't gone through customs, and that you've gone to a person, they've checked your passport, they've started the process of letting you in the US, but you haven't collected your bags. And you can't leave them behind because if you're carrying something illegal or whatever, they have to inspect it and have the person, whoever is in trouble, they need to be there. So you can't leave without your bags, but if they can't deliver the bags, no one's supposed to be there for an extended period. I cannot really think of a bag claim area in any major airport that can host or seat hundreds of people off a transatlantic flight like that. Like there just isn't space for that because it's not a space you're supposed to spend any time. You're supposed to collect your bag as quickly as it comes and leave. But for 5 hours, man, that's rough. No one has taken really any sort of responsibility to kind of explain the situation. OIA, I did it myself. MCO,
that's it. Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Can't do that. They've just said, we understand how frustrating and disruptive unexpected weather conditions can be, and we also recognize how challenging it can feel when there are no eateries available in the customs area. We sincerely regret that these circumstances affected your plans and overall experience. That's a lot of words to say not a whole lot. I would love to know how it took 5 hours. Were there staffing issues? Was the plane break, the belt break? I don't know, but you know what? I'm kind of surprised we don't hear about this kind of thing happening more often.
Well, when I came back from Stockholm in late May, the KLM flight from Amsterdam to Chicago had landed a few hours before I did. And those folks were just getting their bags.
Oh, was it rainy in Chicago or
no?
No, just bad.
Just bad.
Just more proof that you should never check a bag ever.
This is true. Even when you're going on a week's vacation to Orlando to go wherever you're going,
never check a bag.
The terrible thing here is that the airline, said, "Hey, sorry, there was weather." The airport said it's not our problem. CBP said, "Hey, the airline's got to get us the bags. We can't do anything about that." Just an all around, like nobody taking responsibility.
Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. Again, also, I don't think that this would be a problem unique to the US. I think if this had happened in Stockholm or if this happened in Paris, I think the situation is the same. You can't leave the secure area without your bags. I don't think so, at least, but I don't think the situation arises all too often where this is put to the test.
Yeah, exactly. Jason, let's do some order and delivery news and some fleet sale news. Get your pocketbook out, and we will be done with this episode. What do you say?
Do it. Go. Speed round.
SAS has ordered a bunch of A330s, including A330neos, firm orders for 18 plus 10 options, and they're going to gobble up whoever will give them some A330-300s at the moment so that they can tide themselves over before the A330neos start coming into the fleet.
Is this for fleet expansion or renewal or
So this is expansion and then renewal. So basically they're going to expand the current A330 fleet and then renew them on a one-for-one basis, basically.
Wow. Not all that long ago, SAS was shedding any aircraft that it could that were too expensive. So quite the quick rebound for them to be ordering 18? Yeah. 330neos, not the 350s that it already has, which I guess will now become the oddball in the fleet, huh?
Perhaps not. I would stay tuned on that one.
Interesting. What do you know? What do you know that you're not telling us?
It's not what I know. It's what I think I know. And I'm not willing to say that into a microphone quite yet.
Yeah, because you're getting at that having an orphan fleet of a couple A350s just doesn't make sense long-term for them.
It doesn't make sense long-term for them. But I will point out that Air France KLM is actively looking to increase its stake in SAS and bring it as a kind of a fully, I wouldn't say equal partner necessarily because of, the size differentials, but those two airlines might have an A350 order floating around out there.
Maybe. Well, who else wants some A330neos?
SAS definitely wants them. I'm not sure who else wants them.
We already talked about them because you should look at the next line where I said China Eastern too, maybe?
Oh, could it be China Eastern? Yeah, maybe. Maybe I can read.
Maybe you could read, the next line. Reuters reports that China Eastern said last Friday that they plan to buy 25 A330neos. I haven't seen much from Airbus or anyone on this order, so maybe they plan to in the future do it. Maybe they have done it. Who knows with China? Orders are kind of difficult to track down there. I haven't yet seen it. coming from the Airbus order and delivery thing, but I guess we should be getting the June update any day now. But that's an interesting addition to China Eastern's fleet. Didn't see that coming.
That'll be interesting to see what they do with those aircraft. So keeping an eye on that one. Elsewhere in China, China Southern Cargo becomes the first Chinese airline to order the 777-8F. So this is the 777X freighter. And they will take 5 plus 3 options, as well as a pair of current generation 777 freighters. So that one we do know about because of a regulatory filing from China Southern. So there you go.
That's nice.
On the flip side of things, the European cargo fleet is currently up for sale. So this gives us at least 12-ish airframes plus one that can be used as a source of spares. So you've got 3 flight-ready A340-600s that have been converted to cabin cargo. You have 9 A340-600 and 500 aircraft in long-term storage that could be put back into flight if you so choose, and 1 A340-600 that's a source of spare parts. So, John Walton, your airline is calling.
Yes, I did not know that European Cargo had gone under or closed up shop or whatever.
Real quick.
Yeah, that happened very quickly. I remember seeing their A340-600s coming to JFK in the COVID era. But that is, I guess, the end of a real strange period of time where you had a cargo operator operating nothing but the A340 family. That was wild that history ever allowed for that to be a thing, though it seems like some of them have moved on to a new entity. Apparently they're part of the Priority 1 group, whatever that is, and some of these aircraft, the split evenly 3 500s and 3 600s will, I guess, continue operating for this other thing. So the days of the A340 5 and 600 freighter, they are not yet behind us. For some reason, it's still a thing.
For some reason, it just keeps going.
I'm okay with it.
Jason, nearly 6 years after this was first announced, Korean Air has received final approval from the Korean Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport for its acquisition of Asiana Airlines.
Yeah, we're losing a real one there. Asiana is a long-standing airline. I am glad. I think we talked about this last week, but we're going to talk about it again. Anyway, I'm glad I'm flying them late November of this year to get my first and last experience on the airline. I'm still a little surprised they approved it. Now, there will only be one major, I guess, long-haul airline in South Korea, though I know there were a raft of concessions that they had to give up to make this happen. But 6 years, man, so much has changed in that time. And I guess Korean still thinks it's worth it.
They better at this point.
At this point, yeah. Hopefully no buyer's remorse.
No. Let's talk about Dallas-Fort Worth, not the airport itself, but the region, because Dallas-Fort Worth is going to have another airport that's not Dallas-Fort Worth.
Why? Does it need it?
Apparently, this is the, I guess, Luton of Dallas.
Ooh, no, this might be the south end. I don't know.
The south end of Dallas.
This is real small.
So McKinney National Airport is on the region's far northeastern side, and it is going to be served by Avelo come November. We're looking at Vegas, Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, Orlando, and Tampa. Basically exactly what you think would happen for Avelo flights.
Yeah, not all that often. You have, I guess, a new commercial airport spin up. I don't know what the passenger terminal or facilities are going to look like there, because I don't believe, has this airport ever hosted commercial service?
I do not know. I mean, I just don't know. I am surprised that this is happening. I mean, good for McKinney for landing them there. This airport's been around since the 70s, but I think this is the, kind of first time they've really had like a full.
It is indeed a new terminal build. They will not be operating out of a shack, well, unless the terminal's not done in time. But yeah, they built the real terminal and everything. So good Don't care so much about a Velo. I'm never going to fly a Velo, but good for an airport, a new startup airport, I guess, commercially landing an airline. That's a big deal for any airport authority.
Yeah. And finally, there will be at least one more search season for MH370. Ocean Infinity and the government of Malaysia have reached an agreement for another year of searching. This search will take place between November 2026 and April 2027, when the seas are a bit calmer. The previous search was hampered by poor weather and rough seas. This search will hopefully take place with calmer seas and be more fruitful. Ocean Infinity, for its part, will receive $70 million if they can find MH370, but nothing if they do not.
Yeah, hope is really, I'm pretty sure it's already faded, so I'm not going to say that, but hoping they find it, really not feeling like they will at this point. Probably the same exact thing I said every other time we've talked about this, but there's always a chance. But the South Indian Ocean is kind of an inhospitable place. So hopefully the seas are a little less rough and they can turn something up. And literally anything would be a benefit.
Yeah, so we'll keep you posted beginning November of this year on that. This has been episode 377 of AvTalk. If you're in Canada, we hope you had a lovely Canada Day. If you're in the US, have a wonderful Independence Day and celebrating the 250th anniversary of America. And if you're anywhere else, we hope you have a wonderful weekend. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.